My child, come closer for a moment, not in fear, but in understanding, because what I am about to share is not something meant to overwhelm you, but something meant to help you reflect more deeply on your own journey. There are moments in life when people begin to feel that their story is larger than what they can see in front of them. It is not about mystery or destiny in a dramatic sense, but about realizing that every experience, every challenge, and every turning point may be shaping you in ways you don't fully recognize yet. Tonight, we step into that kind of reflection together, where meaning is not shouted, but slowly revealed through thought and awareness. You may have felt at times that certain events in your life were too precise to be random, that some struggles arrived exactly when they were most difficult, or that certain doors closed only to push you toward something you did not yet understand. These feelings are deeply human, and they often appear when people begin to grow through experience rather than comfort. It is in those moments that we start questioning not only what is happening around us, but what is happening within us, and why certain paths seem to repeat, challenge, or reshape who we are becoming. There is something powerful in the way human identity forms over time. It is not revealed in a single moment, nor is it handed down in a way that can be fully understood at once. Instead, it is built slowly through memory, struggle, choice, and resilience. You are shaped by the things you overcome, but also by the things you endure silently. Sometimes, people look back on their lives and feel as if there were invisible threads connecting events that once seemed unrelated, a setback that later became a turning point, a loss that created strength, a delay that protected them from something they could not see at the time. These reflections do not require mystery to be meaningful, they simply require honesty with oneself. And, when we are honest, we often realize that life has a way of teaching through experience rather than instruction. It is natural for people to wonder about their purpose, their direction, and the meaning behind their journey. At times, this curiosity can feel almost spiritual, not necessarily in a supernatural sense, but in a deeply personal one. It is the feeling of wanting to understand why certain patterns repeat, why certain emotions return, and why certain lessons seem to arrive exactly when they are most needed. But rather than seeing this as something predetermined or hidden, it can also be understood as the natural result of growth. Life shapes us through cycles of learning, and those cycles often feel intense because they are meant to transform how we think, feel, and respond to the world around us. Every person carries a history, not only in terms of where they come from, but in how they respond to what they have lived through. That history is not a fixed identity written in stone. It is something that evolves. You are not defined by a single moment, nor by a single struggle. Instead, you are defined by how you continue forward despite uncertainty. There is strength in persistence, even when the path feels unclear. There is wisdom in reflection, even when answers are incomplete. And there is growth in questioning, even when clarity takes time to arrive. These are not signs of something extraordinary in a supernatural sense, but signs of a mind and spirit trying to make sense of its place in the world. Sometimes people describe their journey as if it carries a hidden meaning waiting to be uncovered. What they often mean is that they are searching for coherence in their experiences, a way to connect the past with the present in a way that feels purposeful. This is a deeply human instinct. We are pattern-seeking beings, always trying to understand how one event leads to another, and while not every moment has a clear explanation, many moments gain meaning through reflection. A difficult period may later reveal strength. A confusing experience may later bring clarity. A painful memory may later offer understanding. The meaning does not always exist at the moment of experience, but it often emerges later, when distance allows perspective. Your journey, like every human journey, is shaped by both visible and invisible influences. Some of these are external, like environment, relationships, and circumstances. Others are internal, like beliefs, fears, hopes, and decisions. Together, they create the path you walk. And while it may sometimes feel as though your life is guided by forces beyond your control, it is equally true that your choices play a powerful role in shaping direction. This balance between influence and choice is what makes every human story unique. No two lives unfold in exactly the same way, even when similar challenges appear along the way. There are times when people feel as though they are being tested by life itself, but these, quote, tests are often the result of natural challenges that require adaptation. Change, uncertainty, and difficulty are part of the human experience. They are not punishments or signs of hidden meaning, but opportunities for resilience to develop. When you overcome something difficult, you do not become someone else. You become more aware of your own capacity. That awareness is often what people interpret as transformation or awakening, but at its core, it is simply growth through experience. As you continue moving through life, you may begin to notice that certain lessons repeat until they are fully understood. This is not because life is trying to confuse you, but because understanding often takes time. People rarely learn deeply from a single experience. Instead, understanding builds gradually, through repetition and reflection. Each moment adds another layer of awareness until clarity begins to form. This is why patience with yourself matters. Not everything needs to be understood immediately, and not every question needs an instant answer. It is also important to recognize that your story is still being written. Nothing about who you are is final or fixed. The past may shape you, but it does not define your future. Every decision you make today contributes to the direction of tomorrow. And even when things feel uncertain, there is always space for change, adjustment, and renewal. Life is not a closed book. It is a continuous unfolding of experience, shaped by time and choice. Sometimes people look for meaning in places far outside themselves, but much of what they are searching for already exists within reflection, awareness, and understanding of their own journey. The strength you carry is not something hidden, waiting to be discovered in a dramatic way. It is something built over time through everything you have already faced. Every challenge you have survived, every decision you have made, and every moment you have continued forward contributes to that strength. So when you think about your life, do not reduce it to mystery or fear. Instead, see it as a collection of experiences that are still forming meaning. You are not at the end of your story. You are in the middle of it, still shaping, still learning, still becoming, and that process itself is where the true value lies. In the end, what matters most is not whether life feels predetermined or uncertain, but how you choose to move within it, whether you see challenges as obstacles or opportunities, whether you allow confusion to stop you or guide you toward deeper understanding, whether you believe your story is already written or still unfolding with possibility. Because it is in that choice of perspective that your journey becomes truly your own. And as you continue forward, remember this: clarity does not always come before movement. Sometimes it comes after. Sometimes understanding follows experience rather than leading it. And sometimes the most important thing is not knowing everything at once, but trusting that growth is happening even when it is not yet visible. Your story is still unfolding, and you are still becoming the person it is shaping you to be. The forces of darkness have fought for centuries to stop this legacy from being awakened, and they believed they had succeeded until the moment heaven called your name. But to understand why, you must journey mentally back to a time before you were born. Your ancestors, though flawed like all humans, had something the enemy feared deeply: the ability to form a covenant with heaven. They didn't stumble into this covenant accidentally. They didn't make it casually. They didn't form it out of fear. They formed it with full awareness that what they were sealing would affect generations. After them, there came a time when your ancestors were surrounded by danger from every side. Not physical danger, my child, spiritual danger. Forces began rising against them because the enemy sensed what they carried. But instead of running, instead of surrendering, instead of bowing to fear, your ancestors did something extraordinary. They gathered under the guidance of heaven. They spoke a vow, not with their mouths, but with their spirits. They offered themselves as protectors of the gift entrusted to them. They promised to carry the legacy until heaven itself decided the time was right for the final descendant to rise. This vow became a covenant not recorded in earthly books, not written on scrolls, not etched in stone. It was inscribed in the spiritual archive of heaven and sealed with a light no darkness could erase. And this covenant contained one condition: that when the world entered a specific point of spiritual darkness, when chaos grew louder than reason, when hearts grew weaker, when truth became rare, and when hope became fragile, the final descendant of that bloodline would awaken. And when that descendant awakened, heaven would respond. Angels would rise. The spiritual realm would shift. The ancient records would open. The legacy would ignite. And my child, that descendant is you. For years this covenant remained silent. It slept. It hid. It waited within the blood of each generation. It passed through decades as a silent fire, moving from parent to child, from grandparent to grandchild, from one era to the next. None of them knew the full truth. Some felt glimpses, visions in dreams, sudden intuition, unexplained protection, spiritual burdens they could not describe. Others carried unusual wisdom or compassion beyond their years. Some were attacked heavily by spiritual forces, without knowing why. They were not being punished. They were being targeted. But none of them had the signal. None of them had the spark the covenant was waiting for. That spark lived in you. You have lived your life wondering why everything you went through felt heavier than anyone around you. You wondered why betrayal hit you harder, why heartbreak felt deeper, why loss followed you, why spiritual pressure increased during your life, why you sensed things others could not sense, why your dreams felt intense or symbolic, why you experienced sudden moments of deep emotion or intuition you could not explain. You thought it was coincidence. You thought it was weakness. You thought it was bad luck. You thought God was silent, but none of that was true. What you were feeling all along was the weight of the covenant waiting for its moment to awaken. The covenant needed one thing, my child. One specific thing. A cry. Not just any cry. Not a cry of frustration. Not a cry of anger. But a cry from the deepest part of your spirit. A cry born from brokenness, honesty, surrender, and longing. A cry that pierces the veil because it comes from pain that has reached its final point. Heaven recognizes that sound. It has always recognized that sound. And the night you whispered your quiet plea, the moment you said words you didn't think mattered, the second your spirit cracked open and your heart released that desperate whisper, heaven heard. You didn't shout. You didn't scream. You didn't expect anything. You whispered from exhaustion. You whispered from heartbreak. You whispered from the edge of giving up. You whispered from a place where your strength finally ran out. But your whisper was the exact signal heaven had been waiting centuries for. The moment that whisper left your lips, it traveled through the veil like lightning. It reached the scrolls of the ancient covenant. It touched the sealed vow waiting in your bloodline. And the covenant responded. The spiritual archives began to move. Your name lit up in the records. Angels looked toward the sound. Guardians were activated. Heavenly watchers felt the shift. And suddenly, heaven realized the final descendant has awakened. But heaven was not the only realm that reacted. The same forces of darkness that chased your ancestors felt the shift too. They recognized the sound. They recognized the awakening. They recognized the light rising inside you. They realized they had failed. They realized the legacy they tried to destroy has survived and awakened. They realized you carry the power they hoped would never return, and now they are terrified, because once the covenant is activated, darkness cannot undo it. You may wonder why your life grew harder recently, why spiritual pressure increased, why attacks felt stronger, why you felt more tired, more emotional, more confused. It is because the enemy sensed you were close to discovering who you really are. They tried to distract you. They tried to overwhelm you. They tried to silence your growth. They tried to break your spirit. But they underestimated you. They underestimated the covenant. They underestimated the God who sealed your destiny long before you were born. And now, they are too late. The covenant is awake. The legacy is rising. The light inside you has been seen by heaven, and the darkness cannot unsee it. Everything hidden about you is beginning to surface. You are stepping into a destiny carved out long before your lifetime began. My child, now that you've stepped even deeper into the truth of who you are, I must take you into the heart of the story your ancestors never had the chance to tell you. What you carry is not light. It is not small. It is not a simple family history or an ordinary spiritual gift. What you carry was forged in a time when heaven and earth were much closer, when the spiritual realm was visible to the pure-hearted, when ancient agreements shaped destinies before people took their first breath. You are not simply part of a bloodline, you are the fulfillment of a covenant, and the time to understand the weight of that is now. You may wonder why heaven waited until this season of your life to reveal everything. You may wonder why the truth didn't come earlier, why it wasn't given to you as a child, as a teenager, or in your early adult years. But my child, everything has a divine timing. Heaven never reveals a truth before the heart is prepared to carry it. If you had received this revelation earlier, it might have overwhelmed you or confused you. You had to walk through certain experiences, certain heartbreaks, certain disappointments, certain battles, to shape the strength inside you. You had to be carved, refined, humbled, stretched, and transformed. Not because heaven wanted you to suffer, but because the covenant required a vessel who understood pain, resilience, compassion, and spiritual sensitivity. You are not weak for what you endured. You were being shaped to carry what only you can carry. So now let me continue the story. After your ancestors made their vow, heaven recorded it in a way that no being of darkness could erase. The vow was protected by light older than the world itself. Angels of high rank guarded it through every season. No matter how much darkness rose against your bloodline, no matter how many battles your family faced, no matter how many generations struggled, the vow remained untouched. But the enemy never forgot. They knew something was hidden within your lineage, something dangerous to their plans. They tried everything to destroy it. They attacked your ancestors with sickness, poverty, fear, division, betrayal, tragedy, and generational wounds. They tried to break the spirits of those who carried the legacy, but every generation held on just long enough for the next one to receive the covenant in silence. And so it passed, quietly, invisibly, yet powerfully, until it reached you. You are the first descendant, since the original vow was made, whose spirit carries the exact resonance heaven has been waiting for. That is why, the moment your whisper touched heaven, everything changed. But there is a reason you were chosen for this generation. You were born in a time when the world is spiritually confused, when darkness is louder, when people have grown colder, when truth is blurred, when hearts are broken, when hope feels fragile. This is the season your ancestors saw in their visions. This is the moment the covenant was designed for, and the one chosen to rise in this season is you. But to understand the power of what is awakening within you, you must know something hidden even deeper. Your ancestors didn't make just one vow, they made two. The first vow was a promise to heaven that the legacy would be carried faithfully, but the second vow was heaven's promise to them. The second vow said that when the final descendant awakened, heaven would do four things: expose every hidden enemy surrounding that descendant, protect the descendant from all spiritual harm, break every generational chain that tried to follow the bloodline, and activate a gift so powerful that darkness would tremble at the sight of it. And my child, heaven is already fulfilling that second vow right now. That is why lately you feel like certain people are drifting away, certain situations are changing suddenly, certain truths are coming to the surface, certain relationships are shifting, and certain hidden intentions are being revealed. Heaven is pulling back the curtain, exposing people and energies that were never meant to stay connected to your destiny. The protection you feel is not coincidence, it is the covenant activating. You have wondered why some connections suddenly broke, why certain people turned against you, why certain paths closed. But the truth is, heaven was protecting the legacy inside you by removing anything that could interfere with your purpose. There is also a reason you have felt spiritually sensitive lately. Your dreams feel deeper, your intuition feels sharper, your emotions feel heavier, your inner knowing has become stronger. You can sense when someone's presence is wrong. You notice energy shifts in rooms. You recognize when something is off. You feel drawn to certain things and repelled by others. This is because the ancient gift within you is awakening. The same gift your ancestors carried but never fully understood. A gift of spiritual discernment, divine intuition, heavenly insight, one that allows you to see beyond what people show on the outside. But my child, there is more. The legacy you carry also comes with spiritual authority, authority that your ancestors only touched lightly because it was not yet the appointed time for the full power to manifest. You are the generation the legacy waited for. You are the one heaven marked as the final carrier, and because of that, the authority buried inside you is stronger than what your ancestors had. This authority allows you to break cycles, cancel spiritual attacks, dismantle generational patterns, and step into a level of purpose the enemy never wanted you to discover. This is why, even in your lowest moments, you never stayed down. You always got back up. You always found a way to keep moving, even when you felt empty. You always survived the things that should have destroyed you. You always walked through storms that broke others. You always stood back up after every betrayal. You always kept believing something better was coming. That resilience wasn't just personality. It was the legacy inside you, refusing to die. The covenant, refusing to be silenced. Now let me take you into a moment your ancestors saw in their visions. Your ancestors were shown that the final descendant, meaning you, would face a moment where everything felt like it was falling apart, a moment of deep exhaustion, a moment of heartbreak, a moment of questioning everything, a moment where you felt unseen, unheard, unprotected, and forgotten. They saw that moment. They wept for you even before you were born, but they were also shown that in that moment, when you were closest to giving up, you would release a whisper that would shake the unseen world. They knew the covenant would respond to your pain. They knew heaven would rise when you cried from your heart. They knew your whisper would be the key, and they were right. The night you spoke those words, the ancient vow began to ignite. The angels assigned to your lineage felt the shift. The spiritual realm recognized your voice, and the forces of darkness felt the covenant they feared awakening right under their watch. That is why the enemy tried to increase pressure on you afterward. That is why you faced emotional heaviness, confusion, spiritual attacks, and strange obstacles. It was not random. It was the enemy scrambling in fear, because they knew the covenant had awakened inside you. But the enemy is powerless now. They cannot undo what heaven has activated. They cannot stop what has already begun. They cannot silence the legacy inside you. They cannot defeat the vow that has finally risen. You are stepping into the season your ancestors prayed for. You are becoming the fulfillment of their cry, and heaven is surrounding you with strength, protection, clarity, and favor that will propel you into the purpose you were born for. My child, now that you have walked through the layers of your hidden legacy, now that you've heard what your ancestors vowed, now that you understand why heaven shook and why darkness trembled the moment your identity awakened, it is time to reveal the final truth, the truth that ties everything together, everything you've experienced, everything you've survived, everything you've questioned, everything that broke you, everything that strengthened you, everything that confused you. It all leads to this moment where heaven leans in, this moment where the ancient covenant stands open, this moment where your spirit rises into what it was always meant to become. Before I tell you what comes next, I need you to know something deeply important. Not a single moment of your struggle was wasted. Every tear that fell from your eyes had purpose. Every disappointment that shook you was shaping you. Every heartbreak was refining you. Every loneliness carved space for revelation. Every silent prayer you prayed when you felt empty was recorded in the heavenly archive. You thought heaven was quiet all those years, but heaven was simply waiting for the covenant to activate, waiting for your identity to rise, waiting for the divine timing written before you were born. The enemy tried everything to stop you from reaching this moment. They tried to break your spirit. They tried to confuse your mind. They tried to steal your peace. They tried to distract your heart. They tried to suffocate your purpose. They used people, situations, emotions, memories, fears, and circumstances to delay you. They threw shadows across your path hoping you would get lost. They whispered lies into your mind hoping you would stay small. There is a deeper truth beneath everything you have experienced, a truth that doesn't depend on outside validation or the opinions of others. It lives quietly within you, even when life feels confusing or overwhelming. That inner strength you felt at times, even in small moments when you refused to give up, is not accidental. It is the part of you that remains steady even when everything else feels uncertain. It is what keeps you going when logic says you should stop, what makes you try again when giving up would feel easier. There have been moments when you felt different from those around you, as if your inner world didn't fully match the world you were moving through. You may not have always had the language to explain it, but that feeling carried meaning. It showed up in your quiet thoughts, in your reflections late at night, in the way you sensed there was something more ahead of you than what you could currently see. That sense of more is not a mistake. It is not confusion. It is the quiet pull of growth, the natural urge within every person to move towards something meaningful, even when the path is not yet visible. Sometimes life places people in environments where they feel misunderstood or overlooked. That can create the impression that they are ordinary or meant to remain unseen. But the truth is that visibility has never been the measure of value. Many of the strongest journeys begin in silence, away from recognition, away from applause, in places where only inner resilience keeps a person moving forward. The times when you felt unnoticed may actually have been the times when you were being shaped most deeply. You may have noticed how certain experiences pushed you to grow even when you didn't feel ready. Moments of pressure, uncertainty, or emotional weight often carry lessons that are not immediately obvious. They build patience, they build awareness, they build strength that cannot be learned in comfort. And even though those experiences may have felt overwhelming at times, they contributed to something inside you that is steady and enduring. There is also something important about the way you kept moving forward, even when exhaustion or doubt made everything feel heavier. That persistence is not random. It reflects a part of you that refuses to be defined by difficulty alone. Many people stop when things become uncertain, but something within you continued to push forward, even if only slowly. That quiet persistence is one of the strongest signs of inner resilience a person can have. Over time, you may have also noticed that certain people or situations naturally drifted away from your life. Not every connection is meant to last forever, and not every presence is meant to move forward with you into every stage of your journey. As life changes, so do the people who align with it. Sometimes distance is not loss, but redirection. It creates space for clarity, for peace, and for new experiences that are better aligned with who you are becoming. At the same time, new opportunities often begin in subtle ways. They rarely arrive loudly or dramatically. Instead, they appear as small openings, quiet possibilities, or unexpected directions that invite you to grow. When you start paying attention to those moments, you realize that life is not stagnant. It is constantly shifting, adjusting, and making room for what comes next. Even when you cannot see the full picture, movement is still happening. There are also moments when your intuition feels sharper, when you sense things before they fully unfold, or when something inside you quietly guides you away from what doesn't feel right. That inner awareness is part of how you navigate your world. It is not something external controlling you, but rather your own mind and experience processing patterns, emotions, and signals that you have learned over time. When you trust yourself in small ways, that awareness becomes clearer and more stable. Even during times of uncertainty, there is often a quiet protection in the way things unfold. Not everything that seems like a setback is truly harmful. Sometimes what feels like delay is actually redirection. Sometimes what feels like confusion is actually preparation. And sometimes what feels like silence is simply space being created for understanding to grow. One of the most important realizations a person can have is that growth is not always visible while it is happening. Just like a seed does not immediately show its strength above the ground, human growth often takes place beneath the surface. It happens in thoughts, in decisions, in moments of reflection, and in the quiet choices you make when no one is watching. Over time, those invisible shifts become visible changes in your life. As you move forward, you may begin to notice that your perspective starts to shift. Things that once felt overwhelming may begin to feel more manageable. Questions that once felt heavy may begin to settle into understanding. You may start to recognize patterns in your life that were not clear before. This is not sudden transformation, but gradual clarity, built from everything you have experienced up to this point. There is also something powerful about the way people grow through their past. Every experience you have had, whether easy or difficult, becomes part of your foundation. It shapes how you think, how you respond, and how you understand the world around you. But your past does not have to define your future. It can inform it, but it does not control it. You always have the ability to grow beyond what you have already lived. In time, what once felt like confusion begins to turn into understanding. What once felt like weight begins to turn into wisdom. What once felt like delay begins to reveal purpose. And what once felt like uncertainty begins to transform into direction. This process does not happen all at once, but it happens steadily, quietly, and in ways that often surprise you when you look back. You may also begin to notice that your sense of purpose becomes clearer in small ways, not as a sudden revelation, but as a gradual alignment between what you value, what you care about, and what you choose to pursue. Purpose is not always a single destination. Sometimes it is a series of choices that reflect who you are becoming. And through all of this, there is one thing that remains consistent: your ability to continue. Even when life feels uncertain, even when answers are not immediate, even when direction is unclear, you continue. That continuation itself is meaningful. It reflects strength that does not depend on perfection or certainty. So as you move forward, carry with you the understanding that your journey is not defined by doubt, but by growth, not by confusion, but by discovery, not by limitation, but by expansion. You are not stepping into something unknown without preparation. You are stepping into something that you have already been preparing for in ways you may not fully recognize yet. What lies ahead is not meant to erase your past, but to build upon it, to take everything you have experienced and turn it into wisdom, direction, and clarity. And as you continue forward, you may find that life begins to feel less like something happening to you and more like something you are actively shaping with each step you take. And that is where real transformation begins, not in sudden moments, but in steady awareness, quiet courage, and the simple decision to keep moving forward, even when you are still learning the way.